Welcome everyone to Coffee and an Interview. I'm your host, Jacqueline Pena, and I'm so excited to be here with our first guest for season 4, Dr. Ashley Ann, who brings a world of insights and some really important tools for all of us that we can use in our daily lives. So Dr. Ashley Ann, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on a new season.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm overly caffeinated. I had 2 cups before I got on the interview with you. So hopefully I can stay seated and normal energy wise. But
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
You're ready. You're ready. But let's start with getting to know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do before we shift into those heavy topics for today.
Sure. I think of myself as like an earth child. Like at the core of my identity, I am of the earth and from the earth, and I really believe that all of the citizens should have the right to live to their fullest potential. And that's people, plants, and animals. So I think guiding everything that I do and like a lot of the professional stuff that we'll talk about today comes from like me just being a little girl growing up on a farm with bare feet and just, loving the world that we live in. So at the same time, I was actually a very sick child. I was just kind of, I felt like always with something, whether it was a digestive problem or a skin problem or headaches or insomnia, anxiety, depression, like all that. It sort of lived with me. So that didn't make sense to me growing up. Like I had this really great family and a lot of access to things and a really good life on paper, but I was really struggling on the inside. And so I didn't really talk about it that much. But looking back, it was a big part of my struggle. Like I was just tired all the time and it was really hard to, feel good. So I think that kind of experience and then watching some of my family members, particularly my grandmother, struggle with kind of that chronic illness too. I got to my mid-20s and I was like, I want to help people. And I want to understand myself better too. And that's when I became a counselor in 2010. And right at the beginning, I became a trauma therapist. Like everything was trauma informed. And eventually I got into neuroscience and have since gotten into yoga and quantum mechanics and all the things. And so right now what I do is I take what I learn and what has helped me, because I am more happy, more healthy, more whole than I've ever been. And I help other people do the same. Like that's my goal, is to share what I figured out so that other people can use those tools too.
Interesting. And it's interesting that you talked about a lot of different tools in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting to see that you've probably developed something that includes a lot of these tools. So it's more holistic. But you went into trauma-informed work, psychology work early on. And I'm wondering if there's anything that brought you to that area of psychology.
So I had a really interesting training experience. I went to Northwestern University and they didn't have the online program. I actually helped them launch that later on. But when I started, they had an on-ground program and in person. And in that program, you start seeing clients right away while you're learning your book stuff, which is super intimidating, but it's also the best way to learn because you can read things in a book and then you sit across from somebody and you have a client and it feels completely different. So I really appreciated that. And the benefit of doing that also is that you get supervised, right? You're not doing this without supervision. And my supervisor at the time was a trauma counselor. Like she was a trauma therapist. And she had a very different understanding of trauma, which I then found out in the neuroscience later was spot on, which is this idea that we do have a threshold for PTSD, right? I think when people think of trauma, we think of PTSD. But PTSD is a diagnosis, which means you have these symptoms for this long in this way, and then we diagnose you and we treat you in a certain way, right? And especially now we're kind of having this conversation a little bit more. Trauma really happens anytime we're overwhelmed. And my goodness, are we all overwhelmed right now? Like, we are overstimulated, we are overworked, we've got, crazy things going on in the world right now. And my understanding of trauma really was based on that first year, where she didn't really look at people and say, oh, you're sick and we're going to treat you. She was very curious about what happened to you that makes you this way. And back in 2010, that was kind of not what everybody was doing, right? Nowadays, we talk about it now, but back then that was different. And I feel like I just lucked out. Like, I lucked out and I got in her supervision group. There was only one of four of us. And so that was my framework that made sense to me right from the beginning. And so now it's very kind of on trend, or sort of part of the popular culture to be trauma informed and to do trauma healing. But the reason why I do things the way that I do, which is even different than what people are talking about now, is because back then I was asking that question, which is, how do we understand physical, mental, and relational issues, not based on a dysfunction, but based on a normal, healthy response to something that just happened to be overwhelming? So that's really where I began, and why I just have not let go of the trauma framework ever since.
I love this approach in terms of the trauma framework and looking at our lives, because I think a lot of us who have been around for a bit have seen it as something that was used for PTSD or was used for certain types of cases, not realizing. And now we have this more, on trend kind of thing where we're talking more about trauma informed care, and we're talking about what overwhelm does, and burnout. Burnout in itself is a massive trauma to the body and the mind. And we're looking at this a little bit different. We're looking at trauma and overwhelm differently. We're looking at what is the impact of being in this heightened state for too long, or having this medical situation occur, having this terrible relationship issue, or a divorce, or, there's so many things in our lives that cause overwhelm, trauma. And we weren't addressing it as much with this framework. So I think this is a great conversation. It's all of us go through something at some point in our lives, multiple times in our lives, actually. So tell us a little bit more about the framework you're working with.
Yeah.
So you're using it.
So it's funny that not funny, but timely and meaningful that you mentioned burnout, because like I said, I feel like I was really well trained. So I did a 2-year program. I was really well trained. And then I actually stayed in that kind of network of therapists after in my full-time job. So I knew a lot of the trauma work that we're doing sort of broadly now. So I know EMDR, I know the importance of mindfulness, I know the importance of emotion and things like that, and looking at the past and connecting it to, right? There's a way to do trauma work that is, I think, was a part of the way that we were doing it back then and still is now. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was really good, like right out the bat. And I know that because I was part of this huge network of therapists. Some of them had been in the field for 15, 20, 30 years, right? And the minute that I could take on clients as a full-time therapist and was available, they sent their toughest cases to me, because they knew, oh, Ashley's a trauma therapist. She'll know how to help this person who is really stuck. And I was still really good, and I did effective therapy, as evidenced by the fact that my clients never left. Like, they had their spot in my calendar and they showed up religiously. And I think I did really good work. And at the same time, what was happening for me is that all of that illness that I was talking about, like earlier in my life, it didn't get better. It got worse. Like, it got way worse. And I think within the first year, I completely burnt out, and I lost weight without trying. My acne was worse than it had been when I was a teenager. My stomach was terrible all the time. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. Yeah. And at that time, I was doing the trauma work right? And then I was also doing a bunch of self-care. So I was meditating, I was doing yoga, I was journaling, I was going to my own therapy sometimes once or twice a week. I had access to good health care. Like I had alone time, I had supportive family and friends. Like I was doing all the things, and yet I was sicker than ever. And it was a really difficult time because it was really hard for me to not feel like there was something wrong with me, right? Because I had access to all those things. I had a good life on paper. I was surrounded by extraordinary researchers and therapists in the field. So it was kind of like, all right, well, if everybody else is fine, but I'm like broken and decaying, like there must be something wrong with me. And at that point, I almost quit. Like I almost had to quit. But I had another great supervisor at the time who was he was just patient and sat me down and like just wanted to know what was going on. And I feel like had I not had somebody like that who could, just be like, what's going on? How do we support you? Instead of being like, look, you're not seeing enough clients. You're not, what's going on? But I had that safe space enough to be like, okay, so maybe there's nothing broken with me. Like maybe there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe there's just something that we're missing, like all of us. Like maybe there's something that we don't understand about the way that being human works. Like maybe I can figure it out myself. Since I am at this great institute, I'm surrounded by all these resources. I have these clients to learn with. Like maybe I can figure it out. So, you mentioned burnout. That was the tipping point for me, is that I needed to figure out burnout and stress and trauma and what is actually happening for us at such a deeper level than what was available to me. So the way that I say it is like my model and my framework goes way beyond fight, flight, and freeze. Like we are going way beyond, what we conventionally know. And once I got to that point where I understood, like I had a better map of what the human system is actually doing, then I could start piecing things together and being like, oh, okay, well, if this is the map that I'm using, we've been missing all of these roads. We've been missing all of these details. And if I can work with these roads and these details, maybe I can do something different. And sure enough, like it changed me and got me out of burnout. And then I also saw like a drastic increase of my clients healing. Like they would do their healing in minutes instead of months. Like it was crazy how much faster people could go through their healing cycles and really get to a point where they're more balanced. And when everything is in balance, that's when we become happy, healthy, and whole. So that's really what I did and how I got myself out. I really just got a better map for us to use.
This better map help you find better balance.
Yes. In a very structured way. Like I didn't have to guess anymore. We weren't like pioneers, like wandering around the forest. Like I could just be like, no, let's go this way because this is the easy way.
So we all need this map.
I think so. I mean, I'm biased, but I think so. I think everybody has a right to understand how their system works.
Yeah, because you were telling your story and your moments of burnout, and you said it the way we would normally share with ourselves and with others. You need to do this, you need to do that. You were doing those things. You had the support system, you had the research, you did the alone time, like all those little strategies you could check off that we put out there as things to help with avoiding burnout or coming out of burnout, you were doing. And it didn't work. You had to create a map that allow you to find balance. However, you're defining that balance and to be able to get out of that burnout stage. And that's what's fascinating, because we are always trying 20 things to feel better, have more energy, not feel overwhelmed here. And for most of us, it feels, I know for me, a lot of times I actually was working on this for the last 30 days. I don't feel like I'm properly balanced in life. And so I led a 30-day reflection work group and decided to join it, not just lead it. And my framework was balance, right? This work, life, and everything balance, and learning these things on how to enhance that balance, because I'm always trying to enhance it. But I haven't, it doesn't mean that it's perfect, and there's no such thing as perfection. I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of work to always do, and life is always changing. But you found a map. You created something. Tell us more about that. That helps us find that balance. And how are you defining this balance? And what is this map? What can we do? Because we're constantly stuck trying to improve things, but we still are off balance. We're still overwhelmed. We still burn out.
Yes. So let's talk about all of those things that we're kind of mentioning as self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like going on vacations, trying to create, equity, equality between work and life and all the things, right? Taking bubble baths, having alone time, meditating, getting out in nature, brushing our teeth, having a shower, all of those things to me are self-care. Right? Like it's about caring for ourselves, paying attention to ourselves and being like, ooh, this is something that needs constant maintenance. So when I think about self-care, I think about that as a maintenance practice. We have these things and we need to maintain them. Like right outside my window, this is a silly example, but it's happening right now. My neighbor's tree, it's a big, beautiful willow. It's beautiful. And there are two people in it currently like cutting branches down because it's getting pruned, right, for the season. That's maintenance. Like you have this beautiful tree and you have to care for it. That's what we are. We're beautiful trees and we need to care for ourselves. So that's when I think about those checklists that I was doing self-care. I was doing all the self-care. And the big piece that I ended up sort of discovering, right, like making a map for something else, because I think we have great maps for self-care. Like, excellent. I love my meditation app. I love my, sensitive, friendly toothpaste. Like I love our self-care systems. But the system that was missing, which I discovered was really important for me, especially as like a highly sensitive person, I'm neurodivergent. Like I needed a system for self-regulation. So let me talk about how I define self-regulation.
Yeah.
So, self-regulation to me is a management practice, right? So if self-care is maintenance, self-regulation is management. So self-regulation is about constantly managing something that you can't control, you can't contain. It's never the same. So instead of like controlling, maintaining it, you're actually just forced to kind of manage and adapt to it. So here's the example that I use to illustrate the difference. So imagine that you have a river, right? It's yours. So there's water flowing through the river, and there's fish and frogs and algae inside the river, and there are rocks, and then there are like plants alongside of it and trees, and then there are animals that come to the river, right? So we have a river. Caring for this river, maintenance, would be like making sure the water stays clean, right? So if you see garbage, you pick it up. Or if you're noticing that some of the trees are rotting, you might cut down some branches, right? Or if you notice that there's too many of something, like you would intervene, right? Like you're caring for it and you're maintaining the river. That's self-care.
Okay. Self-care.
Yes. Self-regulation, though, is the water running itself. Like it's the water. You have a certain amount of water, and self-regulation is managing how much water and managing the flow of that water through your river, right? So we know that a river, in order to be really happy and healthy, needs to be at the right level. We actually just had major flooding in my area, so I had firsthand experience of this. But when a river is regulated, right, even if there's a lot of rain, but it still flows, there's no problems, right? It might raise a little bit and it might come down a little bit, but the river overall can stay healthy because there's that certain sweet spot that we stay in. But sometimes like the river gets flooded because there's a lot of rain. We got 10 inches of rain in like 2 days, right? So now we have floods. Right now the river is flooding. So now we've got to look at this river and be like, whoa, it's overwhelmed. How do we regulate the water? Do we turn on the dams? Do we turn off the dams? Like, do we need to create this route so that we can get this inlet, right? When there's too much water, you need to regulate it. But it can also happen like during a drought on the other end of the spectrum, right? So the water can be too low. And at that point, then the riverbeds start to dry out and you've got a whole different set of problems, right? So when we talk about regulation, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about managing the flow of energy, really. And in this example, it's water. And we all day, every day have, quote, water or energy flowing at us, right? Like stuff is happening all the time, all the time. And we have different feelings and we have different thoughts and we take different actions based on what's going on, right? Sometimes it's just a little bit of water. You know, we might find out that we're hungry or our kid comes home from school or somebody steps on our toe. There's a little bit of water and you kind of got to do a little regulation to keep everything going. But other times there's like a divorce, right? Or an attack or a natural disaster. And then there's a lot of water and you got to figure out how to regulate all that energy that's coming in. And like to kind of bring this home, our system, our river, is the path of energy between our body and the feelings we have there, our mind and the thoughts that we have there, and the relationships and the actions we take there. So our river is our feelings, thoughts, and actions, feelings, thoughts, and actions. And self-regulation is managing that flow, right? Like, are we aware of our feelings? And can we name them with our thoughts? And then can we honor them with our actions? When we can't, then we stay regulated. And actually the body, mind, and relationships, they'll stay healthy all on their own. But most of the time we encounter things that disrupt that river, right? Like we have to shut down our feelings and our thoughts and do something different. And sometimes we aren't even aware of our feelings because we lost access to it a long time ago. And for me, my river was all sorts of wonky. Like I was dysregulated all the time. Like I had learned a long time ago to shut down most of my feelings. So by the time I became a therapist and I had burnout, like I didn't know how to manage my river. And I was sitting across from people who had so many feelings and so many thoughts and so many actions. So my body just dried up. I was like, no, can't do anything. So I know that's kind of a long explanation, but I hope what people take out of that is it's a different set of skills. It's like a totally different world that we have to take care of or regulate that none of us are really taught how to do. But without that, we can get really sick and we can suffer a lot because either we're overwhelmed and overactive or we're shut down and just completely dried up.
I'm thinking about, I'm going to put myself out there for our listeners as an example. So I'm thinking couple of things around that. It's intense, right? You have to know feelings, be able to process feelings, be able to articulate, think them through, and have those actions and those relationships to bring it all together for the management. Then I'm thinking about my own life, right? I think growing up, you don't have feelings, you just get things done. Right? And then life starts happening and you're still really young. And, I go into what therapists would call into like survival mode. And it's, we're going to get through this crisis. We're going to get through this thing. But then there's another crisis. There's another thing. There's a big shift where you're making a big move. And so you don't get to process. You just go into survival mode and you get things done and you're excellent at doing that. But you don't recognize feelings anymore because you're always, you spend too much time in these states. So that's a lot of foundational work that would have to happen. Understanding feelings and getting to know feelings. That's what I'm thinking is a lot of that to be able to then start articulating these things and taking the right actions. And I think for many of us, there have probably been moments in our lives where we're not dealing with feelings at all. Right? We're bottling them up, putting them to the side. It's survival. It's get through this. It's crisis mode, which feeds into the trauma, it can be assisted or feeds into the trauma-informed care kind of side of the world.
Yes.
But I'm just thinking about that foundational work to make that happen, make this happen.
Yes. So what you said is so smart and so on par and very much aligned with the frameworks that are already out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in order to heal, and this is why, I say that trauma work oftentimes feels like guesswork. It's like, where do you start? Do I, do body scans and get attached to my body again? Like, do I do thought records and name my feelings better? Do I do relational training? Like, there's so much guesswork. And so what often happens is when and this has been happening for years, when I teach that framework, it actually feels really overwhelming because I'm going to say most of us, me included, we have, I'll use the clinical term for a second, dissociated our way
Mm-hmm.
through our lives. Like, our body and our mind disconnected a long time ago because we needed to survive. We could not deal with certain feelings. We couldn't. And that was super smart, right? Like, we couldn't express our anger because maybe that would shut down one of our parents and then they'd become unavailable. We couldn't deal with our fear or our impulse to get away because there was nowhere else to go, right? Or we couldn't deal with our sadness because nobody else around us knew how to deal with it either, right? So I think when people learn that framework, the first thing that I see people have, which I really appreciate because you just embodied, and I think that's so helpful, is like, holy crap, my system is, like, where do I even start? Because mine is so disjointed and wounded, and like, I can't even fathom. Like, Dr. Ann, can you please, like, that's too much. Like, please give me more self-care. That's super easy and super simple, right? So I have faced that for years from clients, from students, from, my family and friends who I'm trying to share this with. And I will tell you that it was the best thing that could have happened to me, was like people being like, that's too much, that's too hard. Because I think that my gift and the reason that I'm here on this planet is to take out that guesswork. So the thing is that you don't have to know anything about your feelings. Like, you don't have to know how to connect your feelings and your thoughts. You don't have to know how to show up differently in your relationships in order to heal. You just need to follow the process that allows your body and mind to connect with your relationships every single time that you're stressed.
Mm.
And I did the hard work of figuring out what that process is. So I don't want to overwhelm folks, but I am going to try to explain this just a little bit.
Okay.
So in the current framework of like stress, we know that there's like fight and flight, right? We have that language, right? We got to fight and we flight. And the way that we talk about stress right now is that it's this thing that happens only every now and then, right? Like, we're going along with our day, and then all of a sudden we feel really angry and we want to fight, or we all of a sudden want to run away and we're scared, right? But the thing is, and this is where my research has come in, this is the map, is that I have discovered 20 stress responses. There are 20 of them. So at any given moment, we're not just fighting and fleeing. Sometimes we foster. I feel like a lot of the people in your audience might identify with foster. So foster is about caring for people, fixing problems, nurturing, showing up, right? Like, sometimes we're doing that. Sometimes we are actually, this is like my favorite one, is fail. There's actually a stress response that's all about fail. And fail is what's like, oh, that's not working. Oh, that's not working. There's nothing wrong with failing. Stress is just about like, oh, realizing that what I'm doing isn't working. So the fail response allows us to recognize that. I could go through all of them. I won't. But the thing that I'm trying to convey is that our feelings come from these 20 stress responses, these 20 broad categories. We have millions of different kinds of feelings, but these 20 categories are what get activated every single time we walk through our day. And our body like uses them as tools. Oh, I don't need to fight that much here, so I'm going to foster instead. Or, I don't need to flee here. I might frown because I'm disappointed, right? So the process that I've put together allows people, anytime anything happens, any situation at all, big, small, somewhere in the middle. If you follow these steps, what you're going to do is in any situation, you're going to clean out your system. It's like making sure that all the faucets are on, so all the water is flowing. It doesn't require digging into your past. It doesn't require guessing how you're feeling. It doesn't require even naming your feelings. Like, it just requires you to go through these steps so that every single time you're stressed or overwhelmed, it gets out. You feel, you think, you act, so that by the time you're done, you're not only regulated and balanced because your system is still connected, but my process also helps you make a decision about what to do. So that's my long-winded way of saying I totally understand the overwhelm, but the thing is I've simplified it so much because I had to. And now, like in my first book, it's just the step-by-step process. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life. If you do these things, you will stay regulated, you will stay whole, and it'll make you more likely to be happy and content and healthy.
I'm going to go back to the river, right? Keeping the river flowing, opening the faucets. So what I'm hearing is so interesting process to be able to keep that flowing. So every day we're going to tackle something new. It's going to be a work stress, a family stress, the health stress, a perimenopausal stress.
Amen.
That's my world now. But so there's always going to be something, and you're providing a process to be able to take that and keep the river flowing, keep that flow, keep the faucets open. So I can see a lot of us sometimes just take 2-3 things happen. We just bottle it up and we keep going, 3, 4, 5, keep going. And then we start looking at more popular terms as burnout. And we do feel burnout because it's like the river isn't flowing as much anymore. We clogged it up, or the faucets are all clogged. So I can see this image. I get it. So you're still doing the self-care, but everything's clogged up and we're not flowing.
Yes, exactly. And in a lot of ways, that process of I call it, the way I talk about it is burnout is backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Burnout is the backlog of feelings, thoughts, and actions that we haven't dealt with because we don't have tools to do it. I mean, 18 of these stress responses aren't even in the literature, right? Until I put them there. So we just don't know. But now that we know, we really can process that in a way that feels manageable. We're not going to open up the dam and deal with all of our stuff at once. It really is about taking what's happening right now, and whatever's stressing us right now will allow us to heal everything else as well. Which is kind of complicated. I'm like, you're such a good interviewer. You're going to all the places. I don't want to overwhelm people, but to answer your question, yes, that is what happens. You just need to unclog that river, but you don't want to do guesswork, right? Because you don't want the river to all of a sudden become overwhelming. And I think a lot of people, that's why we don't want to go digging around in our past, because we don't want to remember that. We don't want to be overwhelmed by that again. So the process that I've created honors that, because nobody wants to do trauma work and be re-traumatized.
I want to thank you for sharing that, because even with my own situation, went through a difficult relationship. Then I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. Didn't even realize that was the case, right? But there's so many things that happen, and I think I didn't find the right match in terms of therapy or the right processes, and would journal about it, would talk to therapists about it, and I was being re-traumatized at some point rather than working on unclogging the river moving forward. Mm. And I think I love something that you said. I think for a lot of us, we have a lot of stuff in our past, and it is our past. It did get us to where we are today. It's part, in some ways part of our day, but we don't have to relive it, and we don't have to dig up everything. I think if we start digging up every single thing in our lives, whether it's that negative relationship, whether it was a divorce, whether it's being the daughter of an alcoholic parent, whether it's other things that happen in life, and you start pulling everything out at once, it's just going to create chaos, and that's not what you're trying to do. Those things happen, and they happen. You don't have to, doesn't mean you have to go back and look at every single thing that happened in order to move forward with a flowing river that's not clogged up, right? That's flowing smoothly. And I like that you share that, because I'm going to go back to the fact that I think sometimes we re-traumatize ourselves, or we are re-traumatized through different strategies that we try, or different things, conversations, things like that. And we're not trying to do that with this process. We're trying to focus on the flow first, and then the management, and then, things will come. And if you want to tackle something from the past and make peace with it again, you can, but you don't have to. It's about the now and the future.
Yes. And that is possible because these 20 stress responses, like the way that I think about it in terms of healing, is what we're doing is when we're traumatized, like what happens is our brain disconnects. Like dissociation, like if you have your hand and you open up your palm and you put your thumb in between, like, and bend it in, and then you wrap your fingers around, that's your brain. Right. So like that's your brain. And if you touch your two middle fingers right there, like that are touching, you can see that it's touching the front of your brain, it's touching your thumb, but it's also touching the back of your brain. That middle part of your brain, it gets sort of, I'm going to simplify this, but it's broken. Like it stops letting things through. If there was a bridge there, the bridge goes away. So that's what happens during a trauma, is that the bridge breaks and your mind and your body disconnect. And that's out of survival. You have to do that because you have to get through whatever's going on. In a lot of conventional trauma therapy, what happens is that the only way you build that bridge is if you like remember or process something really difficult. And what happened for me, honestly, the reason why this system came together is because my supervisor, the original one, was amazing at connecting a present moment with a specific point in a person's past. And she could do that. But for me, when I did my own healing, I couldn't remember my past. Like I couldn't make those connections, and I couldn't do that with my clients either. Like, I don't know where she got it. She was so good. But it came from me being like, I can't connect every trigger to the past. So does that mean that I can't heal? Does that mean that my clients can't heal? I'm like, no, that can't be possible. And the truth is that all you have to do to heal from trauma is to just build a new bridge. You don't have to go looking at the old broken ones. You just need to build a new bridge so that every time your body needs to frown, you figure out how to frown and be disappointed. Or every time your body needs to fight, you figure out how to fight. Every time your body, needs to fail, then you figure out how to fail. And what happens is, like, situation by situation through this process, you rebuild the bridges for all of your stress responses without having to look at your old bridge anymore, right? And that's what my process does. It doesn't require you to look at your past. It doesn't require you to be in unnecessary pain. But it does require you to process what's ever happening in the moment, right? More fully, in a way that maybe we wouldn't usually, but that's what this step-by-step process helps you do. Process the present so that it's not traumatizing, it's not overwhelming, and then you rebuild your bridges along the way.
I love that. Rebuilding new bridges, having different responses, rebuilding the new bridges, because sometimes those old bridges just can't be repaired. It's just going to be, going through a trauma all over again. And sometimes there are just pieces missing. I know for me, I seem to have memory lapses, not necessarily of the negative things, but even the positive things, like students I taught in class, things I did during these peak moments when my bridges probably fell apart. And so, I've been trying to figure that out, but I'm not going to be able to fill in those blanks. It happened. The bridge fell. I didn't get all those memories. So I like this idea of just building new bridges, and you're going to keep building new bridges and sustaining these new bridges. And that's the pivot. That's the new evolution. That shouldn't be a pivot. That's the new evolution of who you are, and being that better person that isn't living in that way as before, that survival mode, the superhero mode, the overwhelm all the time mode. And then the health issues come in, right?
Yes.
When you're feeling that way, I definitely had a lot of health issues when I was younger as well. And you don't have the balance, and you don't feel like you're living your best life because you're not. So I like this idea of, so thank you for bringing that idea of building these new bridges. And
Yes.
having more than two responses to
Yes,
things.
20. We are so well resourced. Our system is so smart, and we just needed to figure out a better way of operating it.
Oh, I like that analogy too. So I have a lot to think about after this interview and looking at my life. And I also need to read your book. And I think this is a perfect time to talk a little bit more about your book, because if anyone's interested in learning more about the process and the 20 responses and interested in digging deeper and building those new bridges, this book could be very helpful in that process. So do you want to share a little bit about your new book?
I would love to. So I do have it here with me.
Oh, perfect. Gravity Point. I'm looking at the book, Gravity Point. Nice cover and
Thank you.
definitely interesting word choice, Gravity Point.
Yes, so I will actually explain that. So this is actually the first of a series of books. So my institute that I run is a training and technology organization, and it is called the Gravity Point Institute. And Gravity Point comes from this idea that there are these 20 stress responses, right? And I actually call those gravity points. And the reason I do that is because each of these points, each of these stress responses, has a constellation of feelings, thoughts, and actions that goes along with it. So like if you imagine like a point of gravity, and there are certain kinds of feelings and that you have in your body as sensations, certain stories that we make up in our mind, and certain actions. So we'll talk about flight or fight for a second, right? So fight is a gravity point. The feelings and sensations are often like your heart rate goes up, your legs get strong and they commit to standing up, your chin might go up, right? Your large muscles amp up. So those are sensations that fight is connected to and sort of controls and influences. And then we have stories, right? And thoughts like, I am going to do this. This is going to happen. I am making this work. I am determined. So there are certain thoughts that go with fight as well. And then our actions of standing up for ourselves or working hard to make something happen or pushing something forward, those are the actions associated with fight. So this idea of gravity point, comes from this idea that there are constellations of feelings, thoughts, and actions. And so this anthology, this book series, is all about sharing my entire paradigm. So there's a lot more than what we talked about today. Like there's an assessment tool, for understanding our stress responses. There are yoga practices that go with each stress response. There's sort of this map for how you can manifest or manufacture certain situations. So there's a lot to it, right? In this first book, though, I didn't include references or research or like a lot of that, which will go into the later books. The most important thing for me with this first book was to give somebody that tool, to give them those steps to rebuild those bridges and to heal right now. Like, do this and you will start the process. And if you want to understand the research, great. If you don't, all the power to you. So this first book is called A Method to Resolve Stress and Trauma Before It Makes You Sick. So it's kind of housed in this prevention framework, which is this idea that you kind of mentioned that we can really heal ourselves physically, mentally, and relationally and prevent a lot of problems when we resolve our stress and trauma. So this book in particular does include the models of how I understand stress, how I put it together, and things like that. But maybe I'm dating myself. Do you remember those Choose Your Adventure books?
Yes.
Oh my God. They were my
Depending
favorite.
on your answer, you would go to a different section of the book. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So I actually start this book out with a Choose Your Own Adventure page. So it gives people options. Like if they want to read the whole thing, they can. If they just want to learn the method, they can go to part 2. But if they are super stressed out and they don't want to read a thing, I actually put the steps in the back of the book. So this is not a book that you need to read cover to cover. This is really like, again, I'm dating myself, but like Encyclopedia Britannica, where you keep it on your shelf and you reference it over and over and over again. And this practice in here can really change things for you. And so this book is all about teaching that practice that we talked about today.
It's a book that's meant to be that tool that you keep near you. and
Yes.
you can go in for different things. I am an Encyclopedia Britannica girl as well. So I'm going to look up what this is and just, pull out the book. But yeah, so I like that. I like that you're not reading through this book once. It's not a once and done kind of thing. You're actually getting to use it as a tool and pop into it at different points for different things, choosing your adventure at that point.
Yes, exactly. It was fully designed to sort of replace me in a lot of ways because I realized that there was a real limit, like whether it was time or money, like people couldn't either afford or invest the time into working with me, either in my classes or one on one. And I desperately want this to be out to people. I want it to be affordable. I want it to be accessible. I want it to be something that somebody can do in their own time. So that's really what this was designed to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, for putting all this together as a resource. I'm definitely going to be buying and using your book because you just, brought a new, what is it? Breath of fresh air and thinking about rebuilding. And so thinking about building new bridges instead of rebuilding old ones. And looking at just your analogies helped me kind of see a little bit better on how I can achieve that balance and bring things to some of my goals to life in the midst of what happens day to day without going through this overwhelm that can cause health issues and things of that sort. So that very, very helpful for me. For our listeners, if you go into the description for this episode, you'll see the link to Dr. Ann's website where you can learn more about the book and her speaking engagements, and a separate link for the book if you just want to click on that directly and get the book, because it sounds like this book is, again, not a one and done kind of deal. You're not just reading it and putting it away. This is the kind of book that will be by your nightstand or at your desk or on your shelf that you could pull out during different times to just start working on building those new bridges and working on new strategies. So definitely thank you so much for bringing this and this different approach, because I think we're hearing a lot of similar things, and they're great resources. They're important for self-care, for managing different things, for looking at work-life balance differently, for trying to see our passions and our why, to reconnect. And those are all part of the toolkit, very important. But this just gives us this broader perspective to help bring it together. And I appreciate that very much. I can tell you, I definitely appreciate it very much. And we'll be putting some of this into practice.
Thank you so much. I just had so much fun talking to you. Like, I feel like you really get it. And yeah, I'm just grateful to have this out in the world, really. So thanks for sharing it.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I said, the links are there, how to find Dr. And you'll have those links there as well for social media. And definitely, if you need to hear the episode again, go for it as you're thinking through your own life. And if you are ready, get the book. Get the book and start working on this process. Start building those bridges. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.